Hi, I'm David with EV World News. We're talking about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. I'm here today with our founder and chief editor, Bill Moore, as well as special guest Alan White, who's the global head of emerging transportation platforms at Siemens Corporation. How you doing, Alan?
I'm doing great, guys. Great to be with you.
Did I say all that right?
Oh, you were amazing. Yes, it was
Yeah.
so great.
You're not the Khaleesi from the east and the keeper of the great rocks or anything
Yeah,
like that too. No, it's quite the
eventually,
title.
eventually, I'd love to be all those things. And when we come out with our virtual dragons, we'll keep you posted.
Yeah. So and you got this new Siemens program called Depot 360.
Mhm.
And this is something new. And so we've invited you on the show today to talk. And like I said, we're all about green energy, electric vehicles. We sometimes will talk about, um, stocks and stuff in both those spaces and also with AI, things like that.
Yeah.
And we drift into topics of aviation and trains and boats a lot. So it's not
Boats,
just
buses, bikes.
yeah, so it's not just cars. We'll talk about anything kind of related to transportation that
Nice.
might have a battery on it or hydrogen or something like that. So let's go ahead and let's
Sure.
start talk a little bit about Depot 360. So in simple terms, what is Depot 360?
No, absolutely. So generally, we keep our solutions to transportation that has wheels and stays on the ground as opposed to planes these days. But you never know. Depot 360 is a product which enables fleet owners, commercial fleet owners, to easily transition to electrification. So that includes not only the vehicles themselves that are being electrified, but the infrastructure. And the infrastructure is not just chargers, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of additional electrification that needs to go on within a depot. Over the last year or so, David and Bill, we've been pretty depot centric, and we've been able to say, "Hey, here's what we want to do and plan, and make sure the infrastructure within the depot is done correctly." But more importantly, for our solution, we've really focused on the ongoing operations because just throwing people a charger and putting infrastructure in place is one thing, but they really need to operate efficiently moving forward. So our whole proposal is being able to reduce per kilowatt hour energy spend over that time, to increase their productivity, and ultimately to reduce or eliminate risk completely as they transition, because that's a lot of the anxiety is they're moving to a brand new fuel source. And how do they do that effectively without having to worry and without having to invest in more resources? And the managed services around Depot 360 would do that for them.
Now, your system uses a mix of telematics and geofencing to differentiate between fleet and personal vehicle charging sessions. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So um, until now, we've really focused on the depots themselves. So whether that's a bus terminal, a warehouse, a truck depot, anything to that effect. And a lot of those companies already use telematics, okay, to ensure that their fleet managers know where the truck is, where it's going, what the routing is, and everything else. What we've added to that is the ability to look at the energy spend around that. So we can start to look at the state of charge, via telematics. And that's a much more preferable, dependable way to access that information than trying to go through telecoms or Wi-Fi or the internet. Using a system that's already in place is pretty important. But when it comes to electrification, guys, and I'm sure you all appreciate that, you have a lot of disparate data sources. You have sources of coming from the charge management system, coming from the telematics you just referenced, David, looking at the energy pricing signals and what the energy tariffs are today, and then looking at the routing. And all those things have to come together. So even though a lot of these companies might have that data and they're generating that data, they really traditionally, haven't integrated that at all. And then what we do is integrate that using AI from the get-go. So we've used artificial intelligence to make sure that we can integrate that data well, but more importantly, enable them to make decisions that would help them in the long run when it comes to operating efficiently, reducing the energy spend, and ensuring that the fleet managers are focused on what they do well, which is focusing on fleets and how those work. We do everything else in the background.
Well, when you see like consumer spending and you go to some EV chargers, especially you get into the UK, it's more expensive than gasoline.
Yeah.
And I realize if you have a charge point, you aren't doing it just to provide us, most people aren't doing it just to provide a service, they're doing it to make money, right?
Yeah.
And so they have to be able to make money, and so that's obviously a big issue for fleets, is trying to be able to economically get those things charged. um, so how does it use varying, so can you talk about how the system uses varying electrical rates?
Sure. So, David, I think the things that you were describing, and it is an issue to tackle, is public charging and these CPOs trying to make sure that they can make a viable living and charge for rates accordingly. Where we come in is we work with commercial fleets, including now fleets that charge at home, which have a locus where they're just managing the fleet for, last mile delivery for food and beverage, for example, school bus, municipal bus, service vans. So any company that needs to transport goods, people, and services, within a depot, that's what we're really focused on. So we can really get to the nub of how to manage that energy savings. Now, what we've announced a couple of weeks ago was this home reimbursement, because what we found is in those areas, you have, companies that have school buses, and what happens with a school bus? That driver takes that school bus home. If they have electric bus, how do they ensure that they fill up? They don't want to go back to the depot in order to fill up, because they're going at 4:30 in the morning. So we want to make sure that they had the ability to charge at home, and we can have a very easy way to reimburse whatever energy they're using at home seamlessly. So that's happening with school bus. It's happening with, you'll see vans for service vehicles go home, and they're parked at home. Similarly, we help them in that area. So we're not only helping in the areas of last mile delivery, school bus, and muni bus, but now we have an opportunity to get to a different market of fleet management, which manages a bunch of different passenger vehicles, as well as some of these service vehicles that generally tend to charge at home. Because up until today, you might have a fleet management company that treats an electric vehicle similar to it treats its internal combustion engine vehicles. And we can actually provide more savings and more margins for their customers and for them respectively, working with the solution.
Yeah. Okay. So can we sort of walk a little bit through this just to wrap my mind around this? Is that, let's say that I have a plumber, and actually we do have one here in town that drives an electric van. Obviously, I think he'll probably, or he or his employees, whoever has the van, will drive it home.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got, at some point along the line, somebody, whether it was the employee or whether it was the company, installed a level 2 charger.
Yep.
Right? Because it's going to be parked overnight and they're just going to plug it in. So normally that the employees, when he gets electric bill, he's going to be charged on his personal home electricity bill for not only the energy that's running his refrigerator, air conditioner, and his lights, but it also the company van. And so what you're trying to do is figure out, how do I reimburse that employee for that amount of kilowatt hours that he's used to recharge the van? So help me understand what the cost of that is, and without obviously revealing company proprietary secrets.
Yeah.
How does that sort of work? How do you figure out how much electricity is used, and then at what rate do you reimburse him? And then does he get something in his paycheck that says this is for your electricity, or does he get a separate stub that says, here, put this in your bank app, whatever? So how does that work?
Yeah, so let's go through those three elements. Number one, the tariff, as you described it, their bill, or the energy rate. Number two, how do we know how to measure that energy? Number three, how do we know that's the truck at his home charger that's being reimbursed, as opposed to his wife or his kids who are driving an ID4, and we don't want to reimburse them for that.
Right.
And then third is, how does it get reimbursed? What's the mechanics around that?
Okay. Right.
So the first thing is the tariff. So we've integrated in a set of APIs. There's about 25,000 odd tariffs in the U.S.
I believe it.
Right.
It's unbelievable. But we've integrated all those into our system. So whether you're in Nebraska, like you are, Bill, or out here in California, wherever it is in the U.S., and soon enough, we'll be rolling this out to some other countries. But focus on the U.S. here. We can then take that information, the tariff information, whatever time of day that is, and know exactly what that is. So the tariff's measured. The second thing becomes the state of charge. So in a professional fleet or commercial fleet, like a set of plumbers or whatever it is, they'll generally use a dongle from a telematics company.
Okay.
We publicly announced that we've partnered with Geotab, so we can take a Geotab dongle, incorporate it into that plumber's van. It
Right.
goes home. Then I know he started at 15% state of charge, whether he has a Bright Drop van or whatever van he happens to have.
Right.
It goes from 15% up to 85%. And then I know what that state of charge is. I know the amount of kilowatt hours being used. I apply that to the tariff. I easily multiply that, and there you go. And then the mechanics of the reimbursement, it really depends on what system he's using. He could be using Concur. He can be using, Workday, whatever system they're using on the HR side to generate those expenses. That's what's being used. So it really depends on what system is being used, Bill, in terms of how the reimbursement would happen.
Okay. So it might be a direct deposit to his bank account with some kind of a footnote to what it is, or it might be a bottom line to, again, his paycheck every 2 weeks or whatever.
That's not for us to stipulate. That's really
Right.
up to the company.
Right.
All we do is just make it easy for the company to know those two coefficients.
So this system is
the tariff rate.
right. So this system is pretty much dependent on the dongle, chip plugging into the USB port and then collecting the data. And I assume the dongle's been. I've kind of delved a little bit into this because of my own personal, car. So there's a zillion parameters you can pull off of the car to collect different pieces. And you're interested in what's the state of charge at the beginning of the session, what's the state of charge at the end of the session then. So, and you've got to participate in this program, the company just simply, you send them or provide them with the dongles that I assume are then somehow identified to that specific vehicle by VIN number or whatever system you're using. Then that's how you're able to track to make sure that the vehicle being charged is the company vehicle and not the family's, as you say, ID4 or Tesla or whatever.
Exactly right. And so, and the good news there, Bill, is oftentimes the customers we work with already have some sort of telematics system. So it just, we just incrementally provide that information because they already have that. Now, if they're going to be moving towards a dongle approach anyway, for whatever reason, that's done not necessarily for electrification. They've had this system in place pre-electrification of fleets. But now that the electrification of fleets happen, they have to start thinking, all right, how can we help them be more efficient, using solutions that we've developed around the Depot 360 platform.
Right. Okay. So when you see that car that says, or that truck, company truck that says, how am I driving? There's probably a good chance there's a dongle in there that's also tracking how that driver's driving.
How am I driving? How am I spending energy? What's my behavior on the road? Am my foot too much on the gas? Am I going up a mountain when I don't need to? Am I driving at the hottest times of the day? So we can, have a whole set of questions in the back of the truck.
I won't name the insurance company, but it's not plugged into my OSB, but it's actually attached to my windshield and it talks to my app that the company has given me. And that's how they kind of track how I'm driving. And of course, I'm able to look at my app on my phone and it tells me how I'm driving, right? So so that's already sort of happening. And I guess I'm supposed to get some kind of a discount if I'm a good driver, whatever.
Yeah, and I think it's as we look at information, it's a new world out there.
Yeah.
And I think collectively we have to find out what the right use of that information is. For us with Siemens and Depot 360, it's really focused on these efforts to reduce operational spend once they have the infrastructure in the ground.
Right.
Now we help with the infrastructure with ourselves and our partners, but it's really what happens over the next 10 years. How do we make sure they're moving efficiently?
Because so I assume Siemens probably piloted this program on your own fleet.
Yeah, that's right. So we've started to pilot the program with the Siemens fleet, and as you guys can imagine, or maybe you can't, when you have a brand new product, you need a bunch of great business development people to do that missionary selling.
Yeah.
So, what's even harder is trying to sell that internally.
I wasn't expecting that.
Well, right. But, guess what? A lot of these companies, they'd prefer to DoorDash or eat out as opposed to, making the dinner at home. But guess what? We did have a BD guy, a very talented BD guy in the name of Robert Momick. And he started to engage with our friends in the Siemens fleet, and specifically with a group headed by a guy named Adam Orth and Peggy Medeiros. And they've been wonderful because they saw what needs to happen. Siemens is committed to electrifying their fleet in the U.S. It's about 11,000 vehicles.
Yeah.
And they said, we can't treat this in the way that we've treated the management of our vehicles, with, traditional, combustion engine vehicles. We have to think about this a different way. So being able to work with them and make sure that, we all understood, what are the inputs it takes to make this happen efficiently was hugely valuable because they do have a big fleet. They do understand what we need, and they beat us up really hard. I'm happy to say, to make sure that we were going to do the right thing. So we've started that program, and it's thrilling because it is a lot of vehicles, but more importantly, they're not going to take any guff from us. We have to do things right internally if we're going to make things happen. So it was very beneficial. Normally when you incubate a company like ours, you're doing it externally through VCs, as I've done in my past. And so you say to yourself, all right, if we're incubating within Siemens, why don't we try to help the mothership really improve what they're trying to do? Yeah. And that was a great opportunity for us, and we continue to work with them to make sure we're doing the right things.
Yeah. Can we talk?
I was going to ask, so Siemens has approximately about 11,000 vehicles in its fleet. Any idea how much of that's electric?
I'm not going to divulge that right now. There's a significant amount, let's just say that, and they continue to work it. But again, the intent is, publicly stated intent is to have the entire fleet electrified by 2030.
Nice. Yeah, well, we didn't figure it was going to be all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's challenging. There's a lot of applications yet that are still working on it.
So for that plumber, he's got a fleet of
Nebraska. Excellent. Okay.
Let's say he's got a fleet of 10 vehicles, right? And 7 of those are now electric. So what does this cost him? Obviously, there's at some point, you guys have to make some money on this, and it has to save him some money. So how does that side of it work?
Yeah. So how our service works, or how our business works, it is a service model. So, what we try to do is make sure that, we provide him a certain, per month service agreement in order to provide this service for home reimbursement, specifically, Bill. Now, the other thing we'd want to do with this plumbing company with their 10 vehicles is be able to say, all right, your plumbers not only go back to your home, but I'm sure there's a centralized place in which they park, and there might be some infrastructure that we'd have there as well. So the infrastructure we deployed, maybe they'd have anywhere from 5 to 7, chargers there on site for those vans. They probably don't need a huge amount of power for those vans because if the vans are back around 5 p.m. and they don't get up and running till 6 a.m., that's about 11 hours to work with. Where we can stop, start, and modulate the charging based on what we see the tariffs to be. One of those 25,000 tariffs is going to apply there in Nebraska. So we
won't be very high.
Yeah, right. What of you and I, David? It's not very high. But that said, then we can start saying, okay, how do we, how do I guarantee for, these plumbers that these vans are going to be up and running and charged to the level they're supposed to be before the end of the day? How do I make sure that the vehicles, that the charger is working well, that the vehicle is accepting the charge? Because oftentimes we've had customers, plumbers go in, they're tired. They're just trying to do the best job for their customers. They go in, they plug it in. Maybe they plug it in wrong.
Oh,
guess what? Without a service,
video audio.
You did? We still hear you, Bill.
Can you guys still hear me?
We still hear you. Yeah, you're fine, Alan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it me or we lost audio?
No, we hear Bill.
All right, we hear you, Bill. Bill, can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear. Yeah, he'll see that. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So
we
anyway,
hear Bill.
Okay. All right. Okay. If they can hear me and they can hear.
Well,
Bill.
we've been having some issues just before we came live, folks, with on Dave's side. Dave is producer here, so he's what's going on?
Technology just drives us crazy.
Alan, sorry about this. Normally this runs smooth as silk.
Hey, Bill, I'm just the guest. I can't sit here.
Yeah, I can't hear.
But anyway,
give me a thumbs up if you hear me.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
No issue.
Let's see now. What can I talk about to fill airtime here?
No, we hear each other.
This is fascinating. And we'll give Dave a chance to hopefully rectify what's going on. By the way, I just sent a proposal. I was at a meeting last night and met one of the people in charge of voting here in. Now it says they can be heard, Dave.
Yeah.
All right, let's.
Yeah, we're talking.
I'm not hearing him.
Bill and David,
so it's me.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Just thought here, if you don't mind.
Go ahead and talk, and I'll just listen.
That way, at least for the benefit of the rest of the audience. But again, what's important for us is to make sure that whether it's human error, data errors, telecom errors, mechanical errors, electrical errors, we can identify those. So if that tired plumber isn't plumbing in that charging cable into the van correctly, they're not going to know till the next morning. But with us, we can say after 20 minutes, when we know that van's scheduled to be charged, we can say, hey, van number 4 is on site, but as it turns out, it's not charging. Can we get that fixed? And it might be as simple as someone just ensuring that the plug is securely into the port and charging starts. It could be all these other things. But the fact is, most of these guys just want to focus on getting these trucks out the door. We want to do the rest. We want to outsource what can be done. And that way we can start generating reports around, hey, here's how much energy you saved. Here's how productive the trucks have been. How can we ensure we can move forward to enable even better energy savings by ultimately aggregating those 10 vehicles and potentially working on grid efficiency, working on some grid services to even save more. A lot of things that we are able to do today, and ultimately we're able to have as these prediction algorithms get better and better over 6 months' time, 8 months' time, I'm ultimately going to allow a 99% service level to be provided for these guys. And speaking of insurance, David, that's it. We're basically providing that insurance policy to make sure that our customers can get on the road when we say they can. So we want to be responsible for that.
That's a big issue in a lot of spaces, when you're dealing especially with gas cars and gas vans and all that. You've got to send them out to get, you got to deal. It's like, okay, you got the fuel man card, you got this card that you carry, this card goes to the vehicle, so you can fill up your vehicle, and it's a pain in coordinating all of that. And it's just so much simpler with electrification, especially with the solutions that I always wonder, it's like, well, how do you make that work between, you got it there, because it's really hard to tell how much juice you put in, but your system then reads how much they increase the range of the vehicle and how much, we know approximately that for every hour you're putting in 1.25 kilowatts, right? That ought to add 3 to 4 miles of range to the vehicle. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty, cut and dry, or unless they have, of course, a level 2 charger and all that, and
sure.
hopefully the companies do that for them, right?
Yeah, whether it's level two or a DC charger, there's general maximum rate in which they can charge, but we can modulate that power over time if need be, which is beneficial for them depending on the tariffs and the rates in which they're charging. So there's lots of things we can do. As you guys probably know, this whole bidirectional charging, and frankly, it's been around for a long, long time. I mean, I worked on a bidirectional project back in 2013, 2014 on a few Air Force bases. And, it's been around for a while. This whole V2G, a lot of people are banging the table on V2G. V2G is great, but get the operations done first. Make sure you're being efficient in the world that you're supposed to be efficient in, which again is transportation. Then we can start to work on additional ways to save energy, working on bidirectionality, working on providing grid resiliency through a much cheaper set of batteries with vehicles than having to invest in a huge stationary storage battery. So there's lots of ways in which we want to help these guys, create a sustainable economic model in addition to just being sustainable. And that's the most important thing.
I have this wild idea that cattle is implementing over in China with tractor trailers where they're doing the battery swaps on the tractor trailers.
Yeah.
And I think I don't think that's the solution for cars, but I do think it's the solution for semi trucks. But you could use that whole system if it was everywhere in the US for load balancing solar and wind, because you could have all of these batteries sitting there taking in all of that energy when it's not being used right away, stored in all these batteries at the battery swap locations, and then going and powering trucks. And it's kind of a unique thing because it would provide so much load balancing to the grid if it was done on a massive scale where there was like 10,000 of these around the country.
In fact, there was a company trying to do that. Same time that Tesla was getting up to speed, there was another company that was actually trying to do a battery swap idea. And all those concepts you just described, David, I think was certainly in their business plan. But it took a lot of infrastructure and spending in order to get that done. And it turned out that, it wasn't ready for prime time. But I agree, there are companies out there today that are doing that already, even with passenger cars. There's another Chinese company there doing that. And, our solution, again, any way you can be predictive and use a platform like ours to ensure that stack of batteries that will ultimately be switched into a vehicle can also provide those services that we're describing here, then all the better. But it has to be done in the best way possible.
You've probably never watched our show before, but Bill's been doing electric vehicle news since the 90s. Okay, so he's the EV world.
I've seen both you and Bill before. I'll have you know.
Oh no!
You need a little faith, David.
Yeah, well, but we usually just report on news, and if I'm really a naysayer, if it's not BYD, cattle, Tesla, Toyota, somebody like that I know has big bucks that they can prove they can execute. I see all these ideas in the space, like, great idea, but I don't think those guys can execute. And it's just, unfortunately, that's the nature of the business. There's been so many people we've seen in the EV space in the United States that we've been hopeful, had our fingers crossed for them, wish them the best, and then we keep watching them go belly up. And a lot of it is they're just not exciting the private equity people to invest enough money to give them the runway or whatever. You take a big global company like Siemens. It's like you guys get into something. It's like, oh, well, that's probably going to come to fruition because you've got big money, big reputation, behind a big global player like you guys.
So let's see. You guys are what? You've got electric bicycle motors you developed. You're working on, I think you've been working on electric aviation motors, things of that nature. So it's a pretty good spectrum that the company has been up to. So
yeah,
go ahead.
No, absolutely right. And it's not, we haven't necessarily gone after fleets per se. So I think this is a slight departure in where Siemens has seen the business. We've done infrastructure. We've done electric infrastructure for a long time. We had charging stations, but now we're looking at a service. And I think what you see, one of the big differences with Siemens now is that, we want to be one technology company. So that's really important to us. Where we were, one, very solid, very dependable, 177-year-old company that had great, stable, products in this area around electric infrastructure. One of the things about what our company is doing is changing the business model a bit to provide these services for fleets around a technology base, around AI. And I think that's what's really exciting. And when you hear our CEO, Roland Bush, talk about our company, he makes it sound like we're one of the top technology companies in the world. And the reason is we're starting to get into these models, whereas traditional companies in the space of technology, they may not have the domain expertise or the experience to try to do that. Whereas I think Siemens is saying, hey, let's give this a shot because our business has been tangentially close to this anyway. Let's be a little bit more opportunistic and really discerning about how we approach these services, because it's clear it's needed.
Yeah. So how would, we've got people listening, and there'll be people who'll be picking it up later, on a on-demand basis. How I'm that plumber, right? Fictional, although I think there's actually one that does it.
But I can't wait to meet this guy.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's either plumbing or heating and air conditioning, whatever he does. Anyway, so how do they move forward? Is there like a local company they call? I want to find out more. So how do they find out more?
Well, first things first, connect with me, and I'm happy to provide them either with our direct team or with a reseller of our solution that can help them out there in Nebraska. So, anyone who's interested in doing this, just connect with me. I could, David, if we can write down the information, or however it's easy to get in contact me, I'm happy to provide my information.
Just tell me what it is.
Yeah, it's just alan.white@siemens.com. It's the best approach.
That's easy. Great.
Yep. And I'm on this.
It's SIE, right? Is it SIE?
Yep. Just as you're reading it there on my little headline there, SIEMENS.
Yeah. Otherwise, in German, it would be Siemens. Siemens.
As much as I've tried to learn my German, I'm not quite there, believe it or not.
Well, believe it or not, both David and I were born in Germany, and neither of us speak the language.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go. Nice. That's an interesting story in its own right. But so we're here in the U.S. We're happy to help. We're looking at fleets of any size. To your point, whether it's an HVAC fleet, any other type of service fleet, plumbing, mechanical, our own Siemens vans, are starting to use this as well through they're part of the 11,000 strong fleet here at Siemens. And then, we're working with food and beverage companies. We're working with a school bus, working with municipal bus. And so those are really the targets we have. And those are companies that generally go out and do their routes. Those routes are pretty predictable. And then they come back to the depot, or now they can go back home, get their charging done at the optimal rate.
Yeah. Well, we have a large Amazon depot, distribution center here, and I can tell you exactly about 5, 6 o'clock at night, all those vans are streaming back into that parking lot, and I assume the drivers, plug them in at night and things like that. And I would assume that there's probably some kind of a coordination that goes on with our local power company, which is OPPD, which, by the way, has been a real leader in this whole electrification area. They operated one of the very first plug-in hybrids in the state. And for about 10 years, they supported my Power Drive initiative, was working with high schools to build electric vehicles, little, basically go-karts, electric go-karts to race around in competitions. And they did that for about 10 years. So they've really been pioneering in that area. So maybe, Dave, you and I should go have a talk with them. But anyway, that's what I've cut. Is how do people who are not in Omaha, who are in Des Moines or Chicago or Indianapolis, how do they follow up?
Well, we gave the email address.
Right.
So
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So,
and of
and
course,
go look at our
I
website as well. Go look at our Depot 360 website. Many ways for them to start understanding, but
Right.
most importantly, it's having a dialogue. Hey, what do they want to accomplish? How can we help them? How can we
Yeah.
show them how they can be profitable? Transitioning to this new path. That's really what we want to talk about.
Okay.
so my AI chatbot wants to know, how might a home charging reimbursement integrate with renewable energy credits or carbon reporting for companies with sustainability goals?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that we can do if we're doing home charging, oftentimes if you have a company doing home charging, they're generally within a neighborhood, say 10, 20 miles away. You have carbon credit markets like here and in California, and it's propagating in many other states and even provinces up in Canada. You have the low carbon fuel standard credits, or the LCFS credits. We can certainly provide them a program around home charging, or even within the depot, so we can help them manage their carbon credits. Again, not something they're used to doing. We're happy to do it. And more importantly, we want to be very, very transparent with these customers so they feel like what we're doing is a service, and they very much understand exactly what they'd be getting and what credits they'd be generating around this. So that's point number one, David. The other thing we can do, both within the depot as well as with this home charging, is being able to aggregate all of these vehicle batteries and have them participate in other demand response programs through the utility, whether it's OCP, like Bill was mentioning in Nebraska, or the IOUs on the East West Coast, or even some of the regional utilities, consumer choice aggregate utilities here in California. There's many programs, and a lot of times they can be very esoteric. So I think that we have the skill set to help them really ensure that they participate in the right way. And they're doing so by taking advantage of these aggregations of batteries moving forward. So that's a very important piece of where we want to go with our customers.
Great. So do you see any upcoming needs for regulatory changes that could help increase, the ability for fleets to charge at home?
I think on the regulatory side, there are probably many things, that would probably take another hour and a half to discuss. And, I really, at the end of the day, we really want to adapt to, whatever policy is now out there in the U.S. We do feel, from an energy standpoint, that does U.S. need energy independence? Yes. Can electrification be part of it? No question. Okay. And that's really where we feel the need is. The opportunity with electrification is going to be there. Going, vertically integrated from accessing, in the best and the safest and the cleanest way, rare earth minerals that ultimately can be converted into, chemically converted into the right battery here in the U.S. And then we go from there. So I think that's an important element of what we'd want to see. If we're going to be working on the mineral side and then the rare earth side, we might as well sell those to U.S. companies that can do something with them and then be able to work on the battery side. So that's important. We'd love to see a policy there which gives that opportunity a fair chance within an open market. Because at the end of the day, that's what we at Siemens believe in. We believe in access to open markets in the best possible way.
Nice. So how did one end up becoming the global head of emerging transportation platforms, and how did that name come about?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I know you love these long-winded names, David. So, so I've generally been involved in the startup community around the electric vehicle infrastructure space.
Nice.
And so way back in the day when ChargePoint was called Coulomb to.
Oh yeah, I remember. Thanks.
It's been a while.
It's been a while.
We're working with Lawrence Berkeley Labs on that bidirectional project, putting together a company called eMotorWorks, and I kind of led the enterprise, software group to enable automotive companies and utilities to, leverage our platform so we could start to aggregate vehicles and have them participate in some of these programs. And so, with that, I was called by someone and said, "Hey, how would you like to join Siemens?" I'm like, "Siemens? Wow, it's not exactly a startup, is it?" But sure.
Maybe to the Japanese, it's a startup.
Yeah. There's a wonderful leader who just came on board, the CTO of a business unit named Thomas Kiesling. And so Thomas and we spent about 3 hours walking around Park Presidio and about ideas of what we could try to do. And one thing led to another. So it became from me in a PowerPoint to having the opportunity for Siemens to fund this business. And so, as I talked about earlier, it's been a thrill to be able to have that happen. And it's certainly different than, the typical, venture capitalist. Siemens as a venture capitalist actually gives us a lot more rigor in our approach and style. And if anything, it's benefited us quite a bit. In addition to, as I noted earlier, the fact that we can use Siemens as a customer in the best possible way.
That's awesome.
That's how it happened, David. So that's why I got
that's great.
the title.
Nice. I'm very familiar with how things happen that way. And I don't have any further questions. Anything you'd like to add before, we go off the air?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Hopefully I was able to convey to you and your audience exactly what we're trying to achieve when it comes to electrification of fleets. Again, we think we can really help to, really drive this through the reduction of the energy spend moving forward, eliminating the risk through the AI platform over time as we get more predictive, and really make sure that, we have a software platform, but we want our customers to take advantage of that. We don't want to have them, have to be trained on yet another piece of software when they're used to getting out and being in the depot and help manage that fleet. And so we'd like to think that our solution can really help the productivity, being able to use technology in the best ways without having to be a black belt in it. And that's what we want to do.
All right. Well, great. Thanks so much for coming on our show today. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, let me add one more thing here. Expect an email from me because I have an idea that I want to run by you that I spent a good part of my morning writing this morning. I think it probably has relevance to this. So expect something from me.
I'll look forward to it. Thanks, Bill.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to play an outro and then just hang out for a minute.
Okay.
Thank you, folks, for watching.